Well, let me tell you something, sugar. Life has a funny way of showing you who really stands for you and who just stands near you. Sometimes the warning you need doesn't come from thunder from heaven or a loud voice from the sky. Sometimes it comes from the small trembling voice of a child you love more than your own breath. And that morning when my grandson begged me not to go back home, I didn't know whether to laugh it off, hug him tight, or ask God himself what was going on. But oh honey, the answer came. And when it came, it was not gentle. I woke up that morning with a heaviness I could not explain. The sun had barely risen and the house was quiet, yet something in the quiet felt wrong. Sometimes the air speaks to your spirit before your mind can understand what it is trying to say. I moved slowly through the kitchen making tea and trying to shake the strange feeling that had settled in my chest. I thought maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was nothing more than age and worry catching up with me. But deep down I knew better. I had lived long enough to recognize the difference between ordinary worry and that deeper kind of stirring that comes from a place far beyond logic. I felt it strong that morning. Strong enough to make my hands tremble when I held my cup. I decided to go see my grandson before heading home. He always made my day brighter. That child had a light in him so warm and so pure that it could soften the sharpest sorrow. I walked into my son's house and heard him giggling from the living room. The sound brought a small smile to my face, and for a moment I forgot the strange weight pressing on my heart. He ran to me the moment he saw me and wrapped his little arms around my waist. I felt his love like a warm blanket around my soul. I held him tight and whispered, "Good morning, sweetheart." He looked up at me with eyes full of innocence yet also shaded by something I could not name. We sat together and played for a while. I braided his hair. I helped him build a tower with his blocks. I watched him run in circles full of joy and life. Everything appeared normal, yet there was a tension in the room that I had never seen before. A kind of quiet watching in his eyes. Children do not always understand how to speak their fears directly, but they know when something is wrong. They know before we do sometimes. That morning his little heart was trying to speak through glances and pauses and the way he kept touching my arm as if making sure I was still there. After breakfast I gathered my purse and said I should head home soon. That was when the entire atmosphere changed. The smile fell right off his face. His small hand reached out fast and grabbed mine as if he had been waiting for that moment. "Grandma, do not go home." His voice shook. It was not a playful request. It was not clingy affection. It was a warning wrapped in fear. I looked down at him thinking I must have misheard. "What do you mean, darling?" He shook his head hard. "Do not go home. Stay here. Please stay." The fear in his eyes froze me in place. It was raw and honest. Fear so real that it reached right into my spirit and pulled something forward that I did not know was still inside me. I knelt down slowly. My knees are not as strong as they used to be, so it took me a moment. When I finally met his eyes, I saw tears forming. Not loud tears. Not dramatic tears. Just silent ones gathering like tiny pearls on his eyelashes. That was when I felt that first deep jolt in my chest. Children cry for many reasons. But when a child cries without sound, there is something deeper beneath it. I touched his cheek gently. "Sweetheart, why do you not want Grandma to go home?" He looked away. He would not meet my eyes. That silence spoke louder than any explanation he might have given. A child who cannot speak his fear is carrying something too heavy for his small heart. I tried again. "What happened, baby? Did someone say something? Did something scare you?" He shook his head again, but I saw his little lip quiver. He was terrified of something. And whatever it was, he believed it was waiting for me at my house. My thoughts began to spin. My heart beat faster. I tried to think back on the last few days. Had anyone visited me unexpectedly? Had I heard anything strange? Had I misplaced anything? Nothing came to mind. Everything in my home seemed normal. Too normal. That kind of normal that hides truth beneath the surface. I felt the weight return. Stronger this time. Like a hand pressing down on my shoulders telling me to listen. I held his hands in mine. They were warm and trembling. "Baby, tell me what you saw. Tell me what you heard. You can trust Grandma." He kept shaking his head. He pulled his hands back and hugged himself like he was trying to keep his fear inside. That is when I realized that he was not afraid of something he did. He was afraid of someone else. Someone who had done something or said something he believed I needed protection from. A chill ran through my whole body. Just then my daughter walked into the kitchen. Her voice loud and cheerful. "Mama, you ready for me to take you home?" Her tone was bright, but something about her smile did not match her eyes. There was too much stretch in the curve of her lips. Too much polish. Not enough warmth. My grandson instantly let go of my hand and stepped back like he had been caught doing something wrong. That told me everything I needed to know. Whatever was happening involved her. Maybe not directly, maybe not intentionally, but she was tied to his fear somehow. I repeated what he had said. "He does not want me to go home. He says I should stay." My daughter's smile froze for a second. Only a second, but that was long enough. You cannot hide truth from a mother who raised you. She tried to laugh it off. "Oh, he is just being dramatic. He wants you to stay and play. You know how he gets." But her voice wavered, just slightly, a tiny crack in the shell she had put around herself. That crack told me there was something she did not want me to discover. Something she hoped I would never notice. My spirit stirred again, stronger now. The heaviness in the air grew thick like fog before a storm. I looked at my grandson and he was standing still as stone. Eyes wide, breathing shallow, watching his mother, watching me, watching the space between us like something dangerous lived there. That child was afraid that if I left I would walk straight into something meant to harm me. I kissed the top of his head. I told him I would be fine. I told him I loved him. But inside me a voice whispered, "He is trying to save you. Listen." I walked to the door slowly. Every step heavy, every breath tight. My daughter grabbed her keys with that too bright smile still plastered on her face. And my grandson just stared. Not blinking, not moving. The image seared itself into my heart. I will never forget that look. The look of a child who has seen something his little soul should never have had to carry. When I stepped outside, the morning light felt wrong. The world looked normal, but it felt different. It felt dangerous, and I could not shake the feeling that the moment I walked into my house I would find something waiting for me. Something my daughter hoped I would overlook. Something my grandson had already sensed far too deeply. I got into the car with a heart full of fear and a mind full of questions. And as we pulled out of the driveway I saw my grandson standing in the window watching us drive away with a look of pure dread on his face. And that was when I knew. Something was coming. Something real. Something that had shaken that child to his core. And I was walking straight toward it. The closer we got to my house the heavier the feeling inside me grew. I kept trying to shake it off, telling myself I was being dramatic, telling myself my grandson was just having a moment of childish fear. But my spirit would not settle. It felt like something inside me was tapping on the door of my heart saying, "Pay attention, something is wrong." I looked out the window as we drove. The streets were quiet. The sky was soft with early morning light. Everything looked peaceful on the outside, yet inside me there was nothing but storm clouds gathering. My daughter talked most of the way, but her words did not reach me. They floated past my ears like empty noise. She talked about errands and meal plans and weekend schedules, but the more she spoke the more I realized every word she used was a distraction. She was trying too hard to sound casual. Trying too hard to pretend everything was normal. And when someone tries too hard to sound normal, you can be sure something is not normal at all. I kept glancing at her hands. She gripped the steering wheel too tightly. Her knuckles were pale. Every few seconds she would clear her throat or shift in her seat like she was restless. Not restless with energy, restless with guilt or fear, or both. I wanted to ask her directly what is going on. But something inside me told me not to speak yet. Sometimes you get more truth by letting silence do the questioning. Her behavior grew stranger the closer we got. She began driving slower than usual, almost like she was delaying something. She kept glancing at me from the corner of her eye. Her shoulders lifted and fell in little nervous breaths. She was not calm. She was not comfortable. She was not leading me home with peace. She was leading me somewhere with dread wrapped around her like a second skin. When we turned onto my street, I felt my heart beat faster. My house looked exactly the same from the outside. The same windows, the same little garden, the same porch light that I always forgot to turn off. But even though it looked familiar, it felt different. The air around it felt heavy, like the house itself had been holding its breath waiting for me to return. My daughter parked the car and unbuckled her seatbelt quickly. Too quickly. She got out before I did, walked around to my door and opened it for me like she was trying to control every step I made. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. Something was definitely wrong. I stepped out slowly, feeling the weight of the ground beneath me. I heard birds singing. I heard wind moving through the trees. Yet it all sounded distant. Hollow. Like nature itself was watching in silence. My daughter walked beside me, but she kept a small distance. She did not offer her arm like she usually did. She did not speak either. Her silence was louder than any confession she could have given. We reached the door and she hesitated for a second before unlocking it. That hesitation told me that whatever was inside was something she wished I would never see. She opened the door and stepped back, allowing me to walk in first. I paused. I could feel the weight behind that doorway. The kind of weight that makes your knees weak. But I walked in anyway. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt colder. The house felt unfamiliar. It was still my furniture, my pictures, my curtains, but the energy inside had shifted. Something dark had settled in. Something unwelcome. My daughter followed behind me, watching my face closely like she was waiting to see how much I noticed. I took a few steps into the living room, and the deeper I went, the stronger the sense of wrongness became. There were small things out of place. Things that seemed unimportant on the surface yet spoke loud truths when seen together. A drawer left slightly open. Papers stacked on the table that I did not remember leaving there. A pen on the floor. A chair pulled out. Little signs of someone moving through my home without care, without respect, without permission. I walked to the kitchen, and that is when I felt a jolt shoot through me. My purse that I had left neatly on the counter the day before was open. Wide open. The contents inside shifted and disturbed. I knew exactly how I had left it. I have lived in this house long enough, and I know every detail of where my things should be. I looked at my daughter slowly, and her eyes dropped to the floor. She did not offer an explanation. She did not attempt to cover it up. She just stood there, silent and guilty. My heart pounded hard. This was no accident. Someone had been searching through my belongings. Someone had been planning something. Someone had been careless enough to leave traces. My grandson must have seen or heard something that terrified him. Something connected to this moment. I walked further into the house, and the deeper I went, the clearer the truth became. Drawers opened. Mail moved. Papers I had not touched in weeks sitting out as if someone had been reading them. I walked into my bedroom, and my breath caught. My jewelry box was open. Not empty but disturbed. Not stolen but examined. Whoever had gone through my things was not looking for valuables. They were looking for information. That realization struck me like a blow. Information meant power. Power meant control. Control meant plans that did not include my well-being. I turned to my daughter and said softly, "What is going on?" Her eyes filled with tears instantly. She shook her head like a child caught doing something terrible. She whispered, "I did not want you to know yet." My stomach dropped. The word "yet" echoed in my mind. Yet implied a plan already in motion. A plan she thought she could finish before I discovered it. A plan she believed would change my life without my consent. My voice trembled when I asked her again, "What did you do?" She sank onto the edge of my bed, hands shaking. Her tears fell quietly. She said, "Mama, please do not be angry. We were just trying to make things easier." Easier for who, I asked. She stayed silent. That silence was my answer. She had been planning something behind my back. Something big. Something life-changing. Something my grandson sensed before anyone told him a word. And the realization hit me with full force. Children feel truth long before adults speak it. He had been trying to protect me because he saw the danger coming. I looked around the room again, taking everything in. Every disturbed item, every slight shift, every detail pointing toward a betrayal I was not prepared to face. The house no longer felt like my home. It felt invaded, manipulated, and rearranged by hands that should have been protecting me. The heaviness that had followed me all morning settled fully into my chest. My daughter's tears did not comfort me. They only confirmed what my spirit already knew. Something had been done, and the truth waiting ahead would hurt more than any wound I had ever carried. When I stood there waiting for my daughter to speak, the air around us grew tighter with each passing second. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, but tears were not what I needed. I needed truth. I needed answers. I needed to understand why my grandson had begged me not to return home. I needed to know what she had been hiding in my own house. She looked up finally with eyes swollen and red, yet still unable to meet mine. The silence between us sounded heavier than words ever could. It was the kind of silence that carries guilt, fear, and secrets all at once. "Mama, I was trying to help," she whispered. But her voice trembled too much for me to believe that her version of help was anything gentle. I stepped closer and she stepped back, like my presence alone exposed her truth. "Tell me exactly what you were trying to help." She said nothing, so I walked past her toward the hallway. I began to open doors one by one. I opened the closet. I opened the spare room. I opened the cabinet under the stairs. Everywhere I looked I found signs of intrusion. Papers moved. Items shifted. Boxes opened. Folders turned sideways. Things that had sat untouched for years were suddenly shuffled, like someone had been searching for something specific. My daughter followed behind me, wringing her hands. She kept saying, "Mama, please stop," but she never gave me a reason to stop. The more I looked, the clearer the picture became. Someone had been digging deep into my personal life, into my past, into my finances, into my future. The weight of that reality hit me so hard that I had to steady myself on the doorway. I turned around and faced her head on. "You have been going through my things. Tell me why." Her eyes filled again, but her tears did not soften me this time. Tears without truth are just water. She sank onto the couch and hid her face. I waited. I waited because I knew she could not hide forever. Finally she lifted her head and spoke. "Mama, we thought you needed help. We thought you were not doing well. We thought you needed someone to step in." Her words were vague, thin, and full of holes. They tasted like excuses, not honesty. I asked sharply, "What did you think I needed help with?" She hesitated too long. Her silence told me everything before her words ever came. "We thought you were forgetting things. We thought you were getting confused." My heart clenched at those words. Not because they were true, but because of what they implied. She was preparing something against my will. Something that involved assuming I could no longer manage my own life. I asked, "Who is we?" She stiffened. Her lips pressed together like she had sealed them shut. The answer sat heavy in the air. She was not acting alone. Someone else was involved. Someone else had put this idea in her head. Someone else had convinced her that she had the right to make decisions about my life without my knowledge. I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. "You tell me right now what you planned." She broke completely. She covered her face and sobbed like a child caught in a lie too big to cover. She whispered, "We talked to a lawyer." My breath stopped for a moment. A lawyer meant documents. Documents meant signatures. Signatures meant control. My voice rose without my permission. "What kind of lawyer? What documents? What were you doing behind my back?" She would not answer. She only cried harder. I moved to the kitchen table where the papers lay scattered. I picked one up slowly. My name sat at the top in bold black letters. It was a form that hinted at guardianship. A form that would allow someone else to take over my decisions. My finances, my choices, my life. My stomach twisted so sharply I had to sit down. My hands shook, but not from weakness. From fury. From betrayal so deep that it cut through every memory I ever had of raising my daughter. My daughter knelt beside me, her voice shaking. "Mama, we thought you were struggling. We thought you needed someone to help run things. We thought it would be easier for you." Easier. That word echoed in my mind like thunder. When people say easier, they usually mean easier for them, not for the person losing control. I looked at her long and hard. My voice low. "You were planning to take away my decision-making. Without telling me. Without asking me. Without trusting me to speak for myself." She nodded slowly. It was the smallest movement, yet it shattered everything I thought I knew. I asked her one last question. "Why did you not talk to me first?" Her answer broke me in a different way. "Because I knew you would say no." Those words sliced through me like a blade. She had not been trying to help. She had been trying to override me. She had made up her mind and planned to move forward whether I agreed or not. She thought my life was hers to rearrange. The realization washed over me like a wave of icy water. My grandson had seen her going through my things. He had heard conversations he did not understand. He had watched his mother plan something that frightened him at the deepest level. Children may not grasp legal words or formal decisions, but they feel danger. They feel wrongness. They feel when someone they love is being treated unfairly. He had sensed that I was about to lose something important. Something he knew belonged to me alone. I sat there for a long time letting the truth settle. My house was no longer a safe space. My daughter had crossed a line that could not be undone. My grandson had been the only one brave enough to warn me. The only one pure enough to sense the danger. The only one willing to say the words no adult said out loud. Do not go back home. He was right. He was protecting me. He saw what my daughter hoped I never would. And now that I had seen it for myself, there was no going back. Nothing would ever be the same. The moment I stepped outside to breathe the evening air, something inside me shifted. The sun was lowering behind the rooftops, yet its fading light felt brighter than anything I had felt inside that house. The walls there were heavy with secrets and decisions made without me. Out here the world felt wider, freer, more honest. I stood still for a moment trying to gather myself, but the truth settled on my shoulders like a weight I could not shake. My own daughter had planned to take control of my life. Not out of love, not out of genuine concern, but out of a need to command something that was never hers. I walked slowly down the path, with each step revealing a little more strength than the one before. My heart ached, but my mind grew sharper. The betrayal had hurt, but the clarity that followed was powerful. As I reached the gate, I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, careful, hesitant. "Mama, wait," she called out. I froze. Not because I wanted to hear her, but because I needed to understand how far she was willing to go. She reached me with red, swollen eyes and her hands clasped tightly together. "Mama, please listen." I stood still, though my spirit was already stepping away from her. She began to speak quickly. "Mama, we did not want to hurt you. We just wanted to help." The same line again. The same excuse. The same weak defense that no longer had any power over me. I turned to her and looked her straight in the eyes. "If you truly wanted to help me, you would have spoken to me. You would have trusted me to tell you what I needed. You would not have moved behind my back." She tried to step closer, but I held out my hand and she stopped mid-breath. A simple gesture, but it carried all the boundaries she had crossed. I told her in a steady voice, "You did not want to help me. You wanted to control me. You feared that I would say no, so you took the path of secrecy." She flinched as if the truth itself burned her. She opened her mouth, but her words dissolved into the air like smoke. Nothing she said could erase the fact that she had made decisions with a lawyer. Decisions about my rights, my home, my voice. I heard her whisper, "Mama, I was scared." Scared of what? Scared that I would still choose my own life. Scared that I would not hand it over to her. She lowered her gaze and nodded faintly. And in that moment I understood something deeper. She had not done this out of love. She had done it out of fear. Fear that she could not control her world unless she controlled everyone in it. Even me, her mother. I stepped away from her and walked toward the gate again. My steps were slow and steady, but inside me a fire burned with quiet strength. She followed me, still hoping I would turn back, but I kept moving. The distance between us grew with each step until her voice sounded faint behind me. "Mama, please do not leave like this." I stopped for a brief second and let the words settle. Leave like this. As if I had broken something. As if I had destroyed peace. Yet she had never once considered how her actions had fractured everything between us. I turned back only long enough to speak one truth. "You pushed me away long before I took this step." Her face crumpled again, and for a moment I almost softened, but then I remembered what she had planned. Papers, signatures, legal power, choices taken from my hands. No, a mother can forgive many things, but not the quiet stealing of her independence. Not the silent rewriting of her future. I walked through the gate and did not look back this time. The street felt different than before. Lighter, safer, more honest. Neighbors sat outside. Children played. The world kept moving, unaware of the storm that had passed inside my home. I kept walking until I reached the corner. I stood there to breathe. Each breath felt new, like air that had been denied to me for too long. As I stood there, I realized something important. My grandson had felt this same fear. He had sensed that something inside that house was wrong. Yet instead of staying silent he warned me. A child had shown more courage than the adults who thought they knew better. He had protected me in his own simple way. His voice echoed in my mind. Do not go back home. He had seen something I had not yet understood. Now I understood fully. The next steps I took were not toward fear. They were toward freedom. I walked to the edge of the road and made a decision I had never imagined making. I would not return to that house tonight. Not in the morning. Not until I chose to. My life would not be directed by fear or secrecy. I would take back every piece of control that had been quietly taken from me. I found a bench near the corner and sat down. The streetlight above flickered softly, casting a warm glow around me. For the first time that day I felt calm. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything was finally clear. That clarity gave me a strength I had not felt in years. I sat there long enough for the weight in my chest to soften. Long enough to let my heart breathe again. As the evening deepened, I knew this moment marked a turning point. I would rebuild my boundaries. I would protect my independence. I would speak up louder than ever before. And when the time came, I would look my daughter in the eye and tell her that love without respect is not love at all. It is possession, and I will never allow myself to be possessed by fear or manipulation again. Tonight I chose myself. Tonight I chose truth. Tonight I chose freedom, and for the first time in a long time I felt strong enough to start again. When I finally stood up from that bench and felt my feet steady beneath me, I knew I could not walk back into the life that had nearly swallowed me whole. I took a slow breath and let the cool night air settle into my lungs. A strange calm washed over me. Not the kind you get when everything is perfect, but the kind that comes when you finally accept the truth without fear. The truth was simple. I needed to take back control of my life. I needed to start making decisions for myself again. And I needed to protect the one person who had stood by me with nothing but pure innocent love. My grandson. As I walked down the quiet street, I kept hearing his little voice in my mind. Grandma, do not go back home. His warning had not come from confusion or childish imagination. It had come from clarity. He had seen something. Something he could not fully describe, but something that had shaken him enough to break past fear and speak boldly. And I knew deep inside that when a child senses danger, it is never without reason. I reached the small park at the end of the street and sat on one of the old wooden swings. The chains creaked softly with each tiny movement. The sound brought back memories of when my daughter herself was young. I used to push her on swings just like this one. She would laugh with her whole heart. She would grab my hands tightly. She would ask for one more push again and again. There was so much light in her. So much sweetness. I wondered when it had faded. I wondered when control had replaced love. When fear had replaced trust. When she had started believing that the only way to keep her world safe was by managing the world around her, including me. A painful thought rose in my mind. Maybe she had been scared of losing me. Not physically but emotionally. Maybe she felt I was slipping away from her life as she built her own family and her own place in the world. Maybe she believed that by taking charge of my future she would stay connected to me. But connection built on control is not connection at all. It is a cage, and I had lived long enough to know the difference. I pushed the swing gently with my feet, letting the movement calm the storm inside me. As the breeze brushed past my face, I realized something important. My daughter was not the center of this moment. My freedom was. My safety was. My worth was. I needed to stand for myself, and if she felt anger or confusion or disappointment, that would be her path to walk, not mine. A soft rustle in the bushes made me turn, and then I saw a familiar figure running toward me with small, fast steps. My grandson. His little shoes pattered against the pavement as he ran into my arms with a burst of relief. Grandma, you did not go back. Thank God you did not. I held him gently and felt his tiny hands clutch my shoulders with all the fear he had tried to hide earlier. I could feel the tremor in his body. What had he seen? What had he heard? What had made him so certain that going home was dangerous for me? I held him close and let him speak at his own pace. His little voice trembled as he said, Grandma, I heard Mommy talking in the kitchen earlier. She said she was going to get someone to make you sign papers. She said you would not understand, so she had to do it for you. I felt the truth pierce through me once again. My daughter had not simply planned to take control. She had spoken openly about forcing me into it. No choice, no conversation, no respect. I kissed my grandson on the top of his head and whispered, "You saved me, sweetheart. You really did." He looked up at me and asked, "Grandma, are we safe now?" I looked around at the quiet night, at the empty park, at the gentle sway of the swing. And in that moment I made a promise to both of us. "Yes, baby, we are safe because we are together, and we will stay safe because I will not let anyone take control of me or you or our peace ever again." We walked slowly toward the bus stop at the far end of the street. He held my hand tightly, like he was afraid I would disappear if he let go. I squeezed his hand back to reassure him. And as we waited for the next bus, I felt a sense of purpose building inside me. I was not running away. I was stepping forward, toward a life where my voice mattered. Toward a future where no one made decisions for me in secret. Toward a new chapter built on honesty and strength. When the bus finally arrived, we stepped on together. The lights inside glowed warm against the cool night. I led him to a seat near the window, and together we watched the neighborhood fade behind us. That house, that tension, that betrayal, all of it shrinking into the distance. And in the reflection of the glass I saw something I had not seen in years. My own strength returning, my own courage rising. I put my arm around my grandson and he leaned against me with a soft sigh. Whatever came next would not be easy. There would be difficult conversations. There would be tears and accusations and anger. But there would also be truth. And the truth would set me free. And it would teach my daughter something she had forgotten along the way. A mother does not lose her voice with age. A mother is not meant to be managed like a burden. A mother deserves respect. And I was ready to remind her of that lesson with every step I took forward. Tonight I was not just escaping danger. Tonight I was reclaiming my life. And tomorrow I would rise stronger than I had been in years. When morning came, I woke with a new kind of strength inside me. The soft light of dawn filtered through the thin curtains of the small guest room where my friend had let me stay for the night. My grandson slept beside me, curled up like a tiny kitten, his face peaceful for the first time since the night before. As I watched him, I felt something rise within me. Not fear, not regret, but clarity. The kind of clarity that grows only after you break free from a place that was holding you hostage, without chains, without walls, yet still holding you tight. I moved slowly so I would not wake him. My feet touched the cool floor and I stood quietly, just taking in the stillness around me. For the first time in a long time I felt my mind settle. No rush, no confusion, no question about what I needed to do. Last night had forced me to choose between comfort and freedom, between habit and truth, between staying silent and protecting myself. And I had chosen freedom. I had chosen safety. I had chosen peace. I walked into the small kitchen where the morning sun painted soft gold on the floor. I made a cup of tea and sat down at the table, letting the warmth seep into my hands. As I sipped, I let myself think about my daughter. I did not want anger to shape my thoughts. I wanted honesty. I wanted understanding. Love is powerful, but sometimes love grows crooked when fear twists it. I wondered if that had happened to her. Maybe she believed she was doing the right thing. Maybe she convinced herself that controlling my future was helping me. But intention does not erase impact. And impact can break a mother's heart even when the act comes from misguided love. I sighed softly and looked at the rising steam from my cup. My daughter needed to see me not as someone fragile to be managed, but as a woman who still had her mind, her strength and her dignity. She needed to see that her choices had consequences. She needed to see that I would not let her hush me into silence or push me into a corner where my own life was decided without me. I had given her life, but she did not have the right to take mine away piece by piece with secret plans and whispered decisions. I heard small footsteps behind me. My grandson walked in, rubbing his eyes and dragging his blanket across the floor. He crawled into my lap as if it was the most natural place in the world. "Grandma, is today going to be okay?" he asked with a tired little voice. I held him close and gave him a steady, gentle answer. "Yes, sweetheart, today will be okay because we are telling the truth now. And truth makes everything stronger." He laid his head on my shoulder and nodded like he understood more than a child should ever have to understand. I held him tighter. Sometimes children see danger long before adults do. Their hearts sense things their minds cannot yet explain. He had saved me, and maybe in a way I had saved him too. We spent the morning slowly preparing for the conversation that had to happen. I called my daughter and told her we needed to talk. Her voice held a mix of panic, relief and confusion. She wanted to know where I was. She wanted to know if I was safe. She wanted to know if her son was with me. I told her yes to all of it. And then I told her the most important thing. We will talk when we are ready. Not before. When we arrived at her house later that afternoon, I felt something surprising. Calm. The fear from the night before had transformed into a steady sense of purpose. I did not walk into that house as a victim. I walked in as a woman who had found her voice again. My daughter met us at the door, her eyes red from crying, her hands shaking. She reached for her son first, holding him close, then looked at me with a mixture of guilt and fear. "Mom, I only wanted to help," she said in a trembling voice. I looked at her with steady eyes and let the truth flow easily. Help is something you offer, not something you force. If you have to hide it from me, then it is not help at all. She started to cry, soft broken tears. I felt a pull in my heart, not anger but sorrow. She had lost herself in her own worry. She had convinced herself that she was carrying a burden that did not belong to her. She had forgotten that I am still her mother, not her responsibility to control but her family to love and respect. I sat down with her at the kitchen table and told her everything calmly. I explained how her actions had frightened me. I explained why her secrecy had felt like betrayal. I explained that age does not erase a woman's right to decide her own life. She listened quietly with her hands clasped tightly. I could see the shift happening inside her. Not instantly but slowly, like a door opening after being stuck for too long. When I finished, she looked up at me with wet eyes and whispered, "I am sorry, Mom. Truly sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I pulled her into a gentle hug, feeling the tension in her shoulders melt against me. Love does not disappear even when trust is shaken. Sometimes love is what helps rebuild that trust, brick by brick, word by word, moment by moment. As the sun began to set, my grandson sat beside me, holding my hand with a soft smile. He whispered, "Grandma, I knew you would be okay." I smiled back at him because in truth he was the reason I was okay. He had spoken up when he could have stayed silent. He had trusted his heart. He had acted bravely, and in doing so he had reminded me of my own strength. That night as I walked home, I felt no fear, only peace. Peace not because everything was perfect but because everything was honest. Peace because I had finally drawn a line. Peace because I had reclaimed my space, my voice and my life. And I knew deep inside that this was only the beginning of a new chapter. One built on clarity, one built on truth, one built on love without control. I had survived the darkness of the night. And in the light of day I had risen stronger, wiser and more determined than ever to protect the life I had earned, the dignity I deserved and the child who had helped save me.